You know that feeling when you walk into a room you've lived in for decades, and the air itself feels different? Not the temperature, not a smell, but a subtle, psychic shift, as if the molecules of your own home have realigned against you. That was the feeling that started it all. A chill that had nothing to do with the thermostat, and everything to do with the two people I loved most in the world. I faked a vacation to prove I wasn't going mad. And from the shadows across the street, I watched my own life being dismantled. When my elderly neighbor, a woman I'd known for 20 years, slipped into my car and whispered, "Stay awake until midnight. You need to see this." I knew my darkest suspicions were about to be confirmed. But nothing could have prepared me for the cold, systematic betrayal that began the moment the clock struck 12. Where are you watching your own life from today? Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories of secrets uncovered. Let me back up. Let me tell you how Eleanor Vance, a 62-year-old widow, ended up spying on her own two-story colonial in the dead of night like some discount private investigator from a paperback novel. It began 3 weeks ago, not with a bang, but with a bitter cup of coffee. I've drunk the same brand for 15 years. Folger's Classic Roast. It's my ritual. 2 heaping scoops, the percolator's gentle gurgle, the steam fogging the kitchen window. It's the taste of morning, of normalcy. But suddenly it tasted off. Metallic. A bitterness that clung to the back of my tongue and turned my stomach. I blamed the can, then the water, then my own aging taste buds. But a small, stubborn voice in my head whispered that it was me that was being poisoned, not the coffee. Then came the headaches. Every afternoon, like a malevolent clockwork, a dull throb would start behind my eyes, escalating into a pounding vice that made me want to crawl into a dark room and never emerge. Dr. Evans, my physician for 2 decades, was gently dismissive. "Eleanor," he'd said, stethoscope cool against my back. It's stress. Grief manifests in physical ways. Robert's only been gone 8 months. Your body is catching up with your heart. I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted his simple, medical explanation to be the truth. But the timing felt orchestrated. The strangest thing, the thing that set every nerve in my body alight, was the sudden, suffocating attention from my children. My son, Mark, is 35. He's a commercial real estate broker, always chasing the next big deal. His calls were traditionally biannual events. My birthday and Christmas, sometimes lasting a brisk 5 minutes. Suddenly, he was on my doorstep every few days, his arms laden with groceries I didn't need. "Just thought I'd stock you up, Mom," he'd say, unloading organic kale, artisanal bread, and prime cuts of steak that cost more than my weekly electricity bill. He'd putter around the kitchen, his eyes scanning the counters, the mail on the table, with an intensity that felt less like concern and more like an appraisal. My daughter, Chloe, is 32, a high school English teacher, perpetually busy with lesson plans and grading papers. She began insisting on staying over twice a week. "This big house feels so empty now, Mom," she'd say, arriving with her overnight bag and a voice coated in a saccharine cheer that set my teeth on edge. "I worry about you being all alone." She'd never expressed this worry before Robert died. In fact, she'd often joked about how I relished my quiet evenings. Their attention didn't feel loving. It felt predatory. It was the circling of vultures who mistakenly believe their prey is already dead. The tipping point came last Tuesday. Chloe had insisted on cooking dinner, a rich, creamy pasta dish that sat heavily in my stomach. Over a dessert I didn't want, I decided to test the waters. I painted a wistful smile on my face. "You know," I began, stirring my tea. "I was looking online today. They have some last-minute deals on Alaskan cruises. I'm thinking of booking one. Get out of his house, see some glaciers, clear my head." The reaction was instantaneous and chilling. Chloe's fork clattered against her china plate. Mark's face went through a rapid series of micro-expressions, shock, panic, calculation, before settling on a mask of forced enthusiasm. "A cruise," he said, his voice a notch too high. "Mom, are you sure you're ready for that? It's a big trip. So soon after Dad." "I think it sounds wonderful." Chloe chimed in a beat too late, shooting Mark a look I was clearly not supposed to see. "When were you thinking of going?" "Next week," I said airily. "The deal is almost too good to be true. It leaves from Seattle." They exchanged another one of those glances, a silent, frantic conversation passing between them. These two, who couldn't agree on what movie to watch on Christmas, were suddenly a unified front. "We could drive you to the airport," Mark offered, his voice now smooth, salesman steady. "Help you get checked in, make sure you're settled." That night, lying in the bed I had shared with Robert for 37 years, I made a decision that would have sounded certifiable to anyone else, but felt like the only sane choice to me. I was going to fake this vacation. I was going to see what my loving children did when they thought the last obstacle to their inheritance was safely out to sea. The next morning, I called my neighbor, Agnes Miller. Agnes is 78, sharp as a tack, and possesses the healthy skepticism of someone who has seen most of human nature and hasn't been impressed by much of it. I asked her for a favor that required a full confession. "Agnes, I need you to watch my house while I'm supposedly on a cruise to Alaska. I'll actually be at the Comfort Inn on Riverside Drive." Agnes didn't even hesitate. "I knew it," she hissed, her voice crackling with vindication. "Something's been off with those two for weeks. Harold, God rest his soul, always said I was too nosy. But I told him, a woman knows when something smells fishy, and it ain't the salmon at the market. So, there I was, 3 days into my non-existent cruise, sitting in a rented Toyota Corolla that smelled faintly of pine air freshener and despair. It was 11:45 p.m., and I was parked in the shadow of a large oak tree across the street from my own home, questioning every life choice that had led me to this moment. The house was dark, a silent monument to the life Robert and I had built, save for the porch light I'd left on a timer. At exactly 11:58 p.m., my passenger door opened and Agnes Miller slid in with the stealth of a CIA operative, making me jump so violently I nearly hit my head on the roof. "They're here," she whispered, her breath a small cloud in the chilly car. "Been watching since 10. Your Mark arrived first, then Chloe about an hour later. They've been moving around in there with flashlights." My heart hammered against my ribs. Moving around doing what? Agnes checked her watch, a bulky digital thing that glowed in the dark. 2 more minutes, Eleanor. You'll see for yourself. Those 2 minutes stretched into an eternity. I watched the dark, silent windows of my home, my sanctuary, and felt a cold dread seep into my bones. Then, at the precise stroke of midnight, it happened. Every light in the house blazed on simultaneously. The living room, the kitchen, the dining room, the hallway upstairs. It was as if a stage manager had called for full illumination. And there, in the brightly lit diorama of my life, was the play. Chloe was in the kitchen, wearing yellow rubber gloves. She was systematically pulling everything out of the cabinets, pots, pans, my good china, inspecting each item, and setting some aside in a growing pile on the floor. Mark was in the living room. He wasn't just looking, he was documenting. He moved from object to object, the antique grandfather clock, the landscape painting over the fireplace, the silver tea set, photographing each one with his phone from multiple angles, like a detective cataloging evidence. They moved with a cold, efficient purpose that made my blood run cold. They weren't reminiscing. They were inventorying. "How long?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Every night since you've been gone," Agnes said, her tone grim. "They show up just after midnight, stay until 3 or 4 in the morning. But tonight's different." She pointed a bony finger. "Tonight, they brought boxes." As if on her cue, Mark disappeared into the garage and emerged carrying a stack of flattened cardboard boxes. With practiced efficiency, he assembled one and began to carefully, methodically, pack my mother's china, the delicate floral pattern set I'd inherited after she died 5 years ago, the set Robert had joked was worth more than our first car. A moment later, Chloe emerged from the kitchen, carrying my mahogany jewelry box. The one that held my grandmother's pearl necklace, the diamond earrings Robert gave me for our 20th anniversary, the locket with my father's picture inside. I was watching my children systematically loot my home while they believed I was on a cruise ship, eating shrimp cocktail, and losing money in the casino. Agnes patted my hand, her skin papery and cool. "Honey, we need to call the police." But a strange calm was settling over me, freezing the panic in its tracks. They thought they were so clever, waiting until dear old Mom was safely out of the way to divide the spoils. What they didn't know was that dear old Mom had learned a thing or two about being underestimated from 37 years of marriage to a brilliant litigator. Robert hadn't just taught me about law, he taught me about strategy. I pulled out my phone, switched it to video, and began to record. "Not yet, Agnes," I said, my voice steady now. "First, I want to see exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes." The next morning, fortified by terrible hotel coffee, I called Mark. I adopted my best confused, slightly frail old lady voice. "Mark, honey, I'm having the strangest problem." "Mom, aren't you supposed to be at sea? Is everything okay?" The concern in his voice was a masterclass in fakery. "Oh, I'm fine, dear. It's just, I can't seem to find my grandmother's pearl necklace in my jewelry box. I could have sworn I left it right on top before I left for the cruise." There was a pause on the line, a silence just a few heartbeats too long. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "Mom," he said slowly, "you're on a cruise. How could you be looking in your jewelry box?" Damn. I'd slipped. Time for creative storytelling. "Oh, I meant when I was packing, sweetheart. I wanted to bring it with me for the captain's dinner, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm starting to worry I'm losing my memory." "I'm sure it's just misplaced," he said, his voice speeding up, eager to move past my slip. "You know how you get when you're stressed. Remember last month when you turned the house upside down looking for your reading glasses, and they were on your head the whole time? The condescension in his tone was a physical blow. He was laying the groundwork, reinforcing the narrative of my incompetence. Instead of slapping him through the phone, I played along. You're probably right, I sighed, laying it on thick. My mind hasn't been the same since your father died. Sometimes I worry I'm developing dementia. Like your great-aunt Margaret. Another pause. Then his voice warmed, becoming almost avariciously eager. Mom, speaking of the future, have you given any more thought to what you want to do with the house? It's awfully big for one person. There it was. The real agenda, laid bare. Well, I suppose I should think about downsizing eventually, I said vaguely. But not yet. Too many memories, you know. Of course, he soothed. But maybe we should start planning. Chloe and I have been talking, and we're concerned about you managing everything alone. The finances, the house maintenance, all of Dad's business affairs, it's a lot. I let him talk for 10 more minutes, a monologue of manufactured concern. Every suggestion, every worried observation, boiled down to the same thing. Let us take control. You're not capable. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the stiff hotel bed, staring at the floral print wallpaper. These were the children I had raised. The ones I'd read bedtime stories to, bandaged skin these four, stayed up all night with when they were sick. The ones I'd loved with a ferocity that sometimes frightened me. And they were planning to rob me blind, to strip me of my home, my possessions, and my dignity. My phone rang again. Chloe. Mom, Mark just told me you called about your necklace. Are you feeling okay? You sound confused. The fake, syrupy concern made my jaw clench. I'm fine, dear. Just tired from all the activities on the ship. We did glacier viewing today, and I may have overdone it. About the necklace, Mom, she pressed, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. I have an idea. When you get home, why don't Mark and I help you go through your jewelry? Maybe organize it better. Make sure everything valuable is properly secured. That's sweet of you, but I'm sure I can manage. I insist, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. In fact, maybe we should think about getting a safety deposit box for your most valuable pieces. You never know these days with break-ins and such. A safety deposit box that they would, of course, need access to. How thoughtful. We'll see, dear, I said. I should go. The evening show is starting soon. The moment I hung up, I called Agnes Miller. Agnes, I need you to do something for me tonight. I want you to call the police if you see them in my house again. Tell them you're a concerned neighbor and you've seen a break-in in progress. Are you sure, Eleanor? She asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. They are your children. That's exactly why I'm sure. At 12:30 a.m., my phone vibrated. Agnes. Police are here, she whispered, a tremor of excitement in her voice. Your kids are on the porch, trying to explain to the officers that they have permission to be there. The officers want to speak with you directly. They need confirmation. This was the moment of truth. I could cover for them, protect my children from the consequences of their actions, or I could tell the truth and watch their carefully constructed house of cards collapse. Transfer me to the officer, Agnes. A moment later, a deep, professional voice came on the line. Mrs. Vance, this is Officer Rodriguez. We have 2 individuals here who claim to be your children and say they have permission to be in your home while you're on vacation. Can you confirm this for us? I took a deep breath, the silence on the other end of the line stretching taut. Officer Rodriguez, I never gave my children permission to be in my house while I'm away. In fact, I specifically told them I wanted the house to remain empty and secure. The silence that followed was profound and deeply satisfying. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez said, his voice now harder, would you like us to arrest them for breaking and entering? Part of me, the wounded, betrayed mother, wanted to scream yes. But the strategist, the student of Robert Vance, knew that immediate punishment was less valuable than full understanding. Officer, is it possible to ban them from the property without filing charges tonight? I'd like to speak with them myself when I return from my trip. We can issue a formal no trespass order. They won't be allowed on your property until you return and decide how you want to proceed. Perfect. 30 minutes later, Agnes called back, cackling with glee. You should have seen their faces when the police told them they couldn't come back. Chloe started waterworks, the whole this is a misunderstanding routine. Mark tried to pull the family rights card, arguing about property access. It was a beautiful mess. What about the boxes? I asked. Confiscated as evidence, along with the photos on Mark's phone. Eleanor, honey, they had lists. Actual written lists of your belongings with estimated values next to each item. I hung up and walked to the bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back had the same gray hair I'd earned, the same laugh lines around her eyes that Robert had loved. But something in her expression had shifted. The grief had been burned away, replaced by a cold, clear fury. My children thought they were dealing with a grieving, addled widow. They were about to learn they were dealing with a woman who had spent 4 decades as the silent, strategic partner to a legal shark. If they wanted to play hardball, they were about to discover their mother owned the stadium. I had 4 more days of vacation to plan my counter-move, and my children had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I checked out of the Comfort Inn and drove to the county courthouse. If Mark and Chloe wanted to play games with my assets, they were about to get a crash course in estate law, courtesy of their father's legacy. I need to speak with someone about estate planning and asset protection. I told the clerk at the legal aid office. Specifically, protection from family members. The attorney assigned to me was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s named Patricia Croft. She had Chloe's determined chin but none of her duplicity. She listened without interruption as I laid out the entire sordid story, her pen scratching notes on a yellow legal pad. "Mrs. Vance," she said when I finished, setting her pen down precisely. "What you're describing is, unfortunately, common. Adult children who view their aging parents not as people, but as obstacles to an inheritance. The police have evidence of them removing items. Your options are several. You could file criminal charges. You could pursue civil action. But given the totality, I believe your best strategy is prevention, not just punishment." She pulled a thick folder from her desk. "We're going to make it legally impossible for your children to access your assets, even if something were to happen to your health. We'll establish a living trust, assign a durable power of attorney to a neutral third party, a bank, perhaps, and create explicit, ironclad instructions for your estate that will be virtually impossible to contest." For 2 hours we worked. We structured documents that would have made Robert nod in approval. By the time I walked out of the courthouse, Mark and Chloe would have as much chance of getting their hands on my money as they would the crown jewels. Next stop, my bank. Eleanor, Marcus Webb, my financial advisor of 30 years, stood to greet me. "This is a surprise. How can I help you?" "Marcus, I want to move all of my assets into new accounts that require multiple forms of identification and your personal verification for any access. I also want to establish new beneficiaries for everything." Marcus, a man who had seen the Vance family through college funds, a mortgage, and retirement, merely raised an eyebrow. He knew better than to question me when I used that tone. "New beneficiaries?" he asked, pulling up my file on his computer. I handed him a list I'd written on the courthouse notepad. "My grandchildren's college funds are to go directly into trusts for them, accessible at 25. The house and its proceeds are to go to the American Cancer Society in Robert's name. The remainder of the assets are to be divided equally between the local animal shelter and the library foundation." "And Mark and Chloe?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "My children," I said, my voice steady, "each get $1. I'd like you to attach a note explaining that this sum represents the exact value of the loyalty and respect they show their mother." I saw the corner of his mouth twitch, the ghost of a smile he quickly suppressed. "Very well. These changes will take a few days to process, but everything will be legally unassailable by the end of the week." That evening, I called Mark from the hotel. "Honey, I just heard the most disturbing thing from Agnes Miller. She said the police were at our house last night." His voice was tight, controlled. "Mom, it was a big misunderstanding. A neighbor overreacted. Chloe and I were just checking on the house, like you asked us to." "I never asked you to check on the house, Mark. I specifically said I wanted it left alone." "You must have forgotten," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You've been having those memory issues." The gaslighting was breathtaking in its audacity. They weren't just stealing from me. They were trying to rewrite my reality, to convince me my own mind was betraying me. Memory issues. I let the silence hang. "Mark, are you suggesting I'm developing dementia?" "I'm suggesting you're under a lot of stress, and maybe not thinking clearly. Chloe and I are worried. We think you should see Dr. Evans when you get back." Dr. Evans, who knew me better than almost anyone. Unless, of course, my children had already been laying their groundwork with him too. "That's a good idea," I said sweetly. "In fact, I think I should have a complete cognitive evaluation, just to put everyone's minds at ease." The relief in his voice was palpable. "That's great, Mom. Really great. We just want what's best for you." As soon as I hung up, I called Dr. Evans's office. "Jonathan, it's Eleanor Vance. I'd like to schedule a comprehensive cognitive assessment. I'm concerned my children may be questioning my mental capacity." He put me on hold for less than 10 seconds before coming back on the line. "Eleanor, what's this about? You were in here 2 months ago. You're one of the sharpest patients I have. Jonathan, I need you to document my mental state. Thoroughly and officially. I suspect my children are planning to have me declared incompetent. The pause that followed was heavy with understanding. Eleanor, I've seen this before. The inheritance impatience syndrome. Come in Friday morning. I'll run every test in the book and write a report that could be entered into evidence. Friday couldn't come soon enough. I drove home Thursday night, my cruise officially over. Stepping back into the house felt different. It felt violated. Knowing that Mark and Chloe had crept through these rooms, their greedy hands on my things, made every surface feel contaminated. On the kitchen counter, carelessly left as if they owned the place, I found the lists Agnes had mentioned. Chloe's neat, teacherly handwriting detailed my jewelry collection with chilling precision. Asterisk grandmother's pearls, $3,500. Diamond studs, $5,000. Art Deco ring, $200, asterisk. Mark's list, in his messy scrawl, covered the bigger items. Asterisk grandfather clock, $8,000. Silver tea set, $1,500. Persian rug, $4,000 asterisk. But it was the note at the bottom of his list, in that same distinctive handwriting, that stopped my heart and froze the blood in my veins. Dr. Evans' appointment, ask about memory issues, confusion, possible dementia signs. They hadn't just been planning to wait for me to die. They had been planning to have me declared incompetent, to take control of everything while I was still alive to witness it. My phone rang at 7 a.m. sharp on Friday. Chloe. Mom. You're back. How was the cruise? Wonderful, dear. Very relaxing. Though I did have some strange conversations with you and Mark while I was away. Strange how? Well, you both seemed convinced I was having memory problems. I don't remember telling either of you I was experiencing any confusion or mental difficulties. Her laugh was a brittle, nervous sound. Oh, you know how we worry. We just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Speaking of which, I said, I made an appointment with Dr. Evans today for a complete cognitive evaluation. You know, to put everyone's minds at ease about my mental state. The silence was so long and complete I thought the call had dropped. Chloe, are you there? Yes. Sorry. I was just... That's great, Mom. Really great. Mark and I could drive you if you'd like. No need, I said brightly. I'm perfectly capable of driving myself to a doctor's appointment. I hung up and smiled at my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back was about to ace every test Jonathan Evans threw at her. And then she was going to show her children exactly how sharp her mind really was. They wanted to play games with their mother's competency. Game on. Dr. Evans's evaluation was exhaustive. 3 hours of memory tests, pattern recognition, problem-solving puzzles, and abstract reasoning. When we finished, he leaned back in his leather chair, a look of pure professional satisfaction on his face. Eleanor, your cognitive function isn't just normal for your age, it's exceptional. Your memory, reasoning, and processing speed would be impressive for someone 20 years your junior. I'm documenting that thoroughly. He paused, his expression turning serious. I'm also noting in your file that this evaluation was requested due to family concerns that appear to be entirely unfounded. In 30 years of practice, I've learned to recognize the difference between genuine cognitive decline and family members who are eager to expedite the transfer of assets. I drove home with his comprehensive report on the passenger seat, feeling like I was carrying a shield and a sword. That evening, Mark and Chloe arrived together for what they ominously called a family meeting. They settled into my living room with a rehearsed solemnity of pallbearers. Mom, Chloe began, we need to talk about your living situation. What about it? Mark leaned forward, using his boardroom voice. This house is too much for you. The maintenance, the expenses, the isolation. It's not healthy. I'm 62, not 92. But you're alone now, Chloe added, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. And after Dad died, well, we've noticed some changes. What kind of changes? They exchanged a look. Mark cleared his throat. Memory issues. Confusion. Difficulty managing basic tasks. You forgot about our dinner last month. You seemed disoriented on the phone last week. I let them talk. I let them build their case, listening as they constructed an elaborate fiction about my declining mental state. According to them, I'd forgotten conversations, missed appointments, and showed signs of general cognitive deterioration. It was a masterful performance, delivered with just the right blend of concerned love and reluctant honesty. So, I asked when they finished, what do you suggest? Chloe's face lit up. We found some lovely assisted living communities. Places where you'd have help, people to check on you. And the house, Mark jumped in, We'd handle selling it. All the paperwork, the details. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. How thoughtful, I said. And my other assets? Another exchange glance. Chloe took this one. We think it would be easier if Mark and I help manage your finances. Just temporarily, until you're settled. You've already found these places? I asked. We've done some research, Mark admitted. There's one called Golden Sunset Manor. They have immediate availability. Immediate availability, I repeated slowly. For a woman who, according to you, can barely remember her own name. The temperature in the room plummeted. Chloe's smile vanished. Mom, we never said. I stood up, walked to my desk, and returned with Dr. Evans's report. I opened it with a flourish. I had that cognitive evaluation you were so concerned about, I said. The results were illuminating. I began to read. Patient demonstrates superior cognitive function across all measure domains. Memory, processing speed, executive function, and reasoning ability all score in the 95th percentile for her age group. No evidence of dementia, mild cognitive impairment, or any other condition affecting mental capacity. The silence was deafening. Furthermore, I continued, my voice cold and clear, Dr. Evans noted that this evaluation was requested due to family concerns that appear to be entirely without medical basis. Chloe started to speak, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. I also had some interesting conversations with my attorney and financial advisor this week. It seems my estate planning needed updating. Mark found his voice. Mom, we can explain. Explain what? I cut him off. How you've been breaking into my house. How you made lists of my possessions. How you planned to have me declared incompetent so you could steal everything I own. Chloe's eyes filled with theatrical tears. We weren't stealing. We were trying to protect you. From what? From making bad decisions. From being taken advantage of by strangers when you're vulnerable. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left me momentarily speechless. So, they decided to take advantage of me themselves? Mark stood up, his face flushed with anger. Mom, you're being unfair. We're your children. We love you. No, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You love what you think you're entitled to inherit, but you don't love me enough to wait for me to die naturally. I walked to the front door and opened it. I want both of you to leave. Don't come back unless you're invited. Chloe was sobbing now. Mom, please. We can work this out. We're family. Family doesn't rob family, Chloe. Family doesn't try to convince their mother she's losing her mind. Mark tried one last, desperate approach. You can't just cut us out of your life. We're your children. I looked at this man, the stranger I had raised, and felt nothing but a vast, hollow disappointment. You stopped being my children the moment you started seeing me as an obstacle. They left, but not before Mark turned back on the porch, his face a mask of cold fury. This isn't over, Mom. You need us more than you think. After their car disappeared down the street, I stood in the sudden quiet of my home. They had shown me who they were. The question was, what were they going to do now that their plan had failed? The answer came at midnight. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Vance, this is Officer Rodriguez again. We've had a report of suspicious activity at your address. A caller was concerned about an elderly woman living alone who might be in distress. I looked out my bedroom window. Mark's car was parked 3 houses down. Officer Rodriguez, I said calmly. I'm perfectly fine, but I believe my son is calling in false welfare checks to harass me. We'll need to do a wellness check since the call was made, but if this becomes a pattern, we can discuss harassment charges. 15 minutes later, 2 uniformed officers confirmed I was alive, well, and in full possession of my faculties. After they left, I watched Mark's car drive away. The gloves were off. If my children wanted to escalate this war, I was ready to show them what a sharp, 62-year-old woman was capable of when she stopped playing by the rules of maternal love and started playing for keeps.